guess first and foremost, I'd say that I'm a mama. That's probably the thing that takes up the majority of the space in my heart and soul. So I have 3 kids. 2 are teenagers, 15 and 13, and then I have a 5-year-old who keeps me very busy. And so yeah, parenting is a huge part of who I am. I love my work so much, and it's very fulfilling. Started off in nursing and did labor and delivery nursing initially right away, and loved it, but really struggled working within the medical model of care. Then I had my first 2 babies, who are now 15 and 13. Had them at home with midwives, and those were life-changing experiences. And after the birth of my first, Myron, I knew for certain I wanted to be a midwife. And so being a midwife is a huge part of my identity as well. And while I love nursing and I love being a nurse and I'm proud of that, a midwife is really like a lifestyle, and it's who I am. Home visits are my favorite, so if I go see clients at home and then I leave those home visits, I'm just like I'm so energized and it's soul-filling.
Especially if you got to have a cuddle with the baby.
Oh yeah, they're so cute. I am a very social person, definitely an extrovert. Definitely love being around people. I'm fed by being around people.
I'm also a mama, and that definitely takes up the majority of my heart and head space for sure. Our kids are kind of similar in age. I have 3 boys, 16, 14, and 7. I'm also a naturopathic doctor, and I work primarily with fertility, pregnancy, and postpartum, although I do see people who don't fall into those categories. I do women's health, I do men's health, I do a little bit of everything. Pediatrics, I really like working with kids. I always worked with kids, like even before I was in medicine. I used to be in theater, and I always did like children's theater, not in front of the camera like this, but I was always behind the scenes. So I always worked with kids, I always loved working with kids. I'm also a birth doula, so I attend births both in hospital, at home, at the birth center, and I really love supporting families that way. I also think it's like can be so empowering and eye-opening for people when they find out what's possible. You know, when nobody ever told them that birth doesn't have to be something that you just like get over to get to the other side. I feel like you're more balanced. I don't play volleyball. I definitely don't do that. I do love people and going out and friends. Travel, I think, is really important to me and has always been really important to me.
I go to loud places to search for someone to be quiet with, who will take me home. You go to loud places.
I think what excites me too about it is the idea that like not everybody has access to a midwife, a naturopathic doctor, a birth doula, or that kind of support. So to be able to provide access to this kind of information and support without being hands-on is really, I like that. That's exciting. Sure. This course is for anyone who is interested in understanding the full potential and possibility of birth. So you don't know when you're pregnant what kind of birth you're going to have, but you can certainly have some intentions about it. And I think it's important to have realistic intentions, because I've also had, you know, clients or patients who come through and they're like, I definitely don't want any kind of medication, any pain relief, blah, blah, blah. But you also have to have some tools and be prepared for that as well. So I think people who want to be informed and realistic and really understand all of the options and all of the potential interventions, because sometimes that's unavoidable. But I think you avoid some of the trauma of the intervention if you learn about them first. So it's not the very first time you're hearing about forceps when you're in the labor and delivery room. So we can discuss it and you can kind of weigh out the options when it's not an emotional conversation as much.
But First of all, I think the course is for any pregnant person. I really do think it could serve any pregnant person, regardless of their philosophy. I think the people that are going to be more inclined to want to take our course and probably would be the most helped by it would be people who tend a little bit more toward the holistic or natural side of all things in life, not just in birth. We talk a lot about alternative remedies and doing things without medication and thinking about birth even without medication, thinking about alternative birth environments, what some people might consider alternative birth environments. So not just in the hospital, but birth center.
I think I was really empowered by my own first birth experience, and I was one of the first of all of my friends to have a child, and I think some of my friends were not in support of the natural birth, I would say, just because they had their own, not their own personal experiences, but like, oh, I saw my older sister when she was in labor and you don't even realize how painful it's going to be and how hard it's going to be and whatever. And then being able to have that experience, I feel like opened the door to others. And I just felt so supported and so empowered by that first birth, even though it was super challenging and wasn't necessarily smooth with no bumps in the road. I felt so supported by the midwives and so cared for, and I just felt like that should be an option for everybody. So not necessarily everybody's choice, but everybody should have that option.
I also think there are two other things that kind of come forward for me. One is I wish I knew then what I know now. Right? So as a parent, you really stumble along and learn things as you go. And I think our course will do a little bit of taking the edge off of that, right? A huge part of why I'm passionate about this work is because I want to share some of the things that I've learned being someone who is new to parenthood. And then the last thing I would say is that getting feedback from my patients and clients around how helpful some of my teachings have been makes me want to share that with more people.